When you ban my deck, put me in a different seat.
Right, and Nass has moved into the standard seat, and he's playing Simic Climb. Interesting. We saw a lot of people really grasp onto the Crassus archetypes, but they did so in Golgari shells.
Right.
Nass, on the other hand, says, I don't need the black cards. Not worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something to be said about just playing more ramp creatures and just going super hard on Adonis Climb. It's one way to break these giant board stalls that are created by playing all these Jadelight Rangers, things like Wild Growth Walker gaining a ton of life. So Matt is going for, just way over the top, just going hard on Adonis Climb.
Great point. Matt's opponent, on the other hand, 4-color Gates, Todd. People listening right now know how I feel about this deck. I think it's the truth. And I think it particularly preys on this type of mid-range matchup.
Absolutely. Well, I think there's a pretty aggressive tilt in Matthew Nass's Simic Climb deck, so it may be a little harder than, your Sultai Crassus decks. However, I think that the card Guild Summit is particularly disgusting. Gates Ablaze is going to be insanely good if it's ever cast to sweep the battlefield, which it should, as easily as turn 4 with 3 or 4 gates on the battlefield. So it looks like he has that red card in hand. That's probably Gates Ablaze if I had to guess.
Yeah, I think you're right. So far, we've seen Nass develop his board, let on a Llanowar Elves, use that to play a Jadelight Ranger. Meanwhile, over on Sam's side, just chilling, playing some gates. That's what this deck does in the first few turns. Here you see Incubation Incongruity from Nass. Kind of a neat card, one we haven't seen all that much in Standard thus far. Split card, which does a little bit of filtering, allows you to look at the top 5 cards of your library, add either a creature or a land, or is it just creature on the Incubation
It's just creature
side?
on Incubation.
Thank you.
It is effectively commune with
There you
nature.
go.
Everyone tilt your head to the left. It is effectively commune with nature that can be cast for either green or blue mana. Look at the top 5. Pick a creature, put it in your hand. But you have the back half of Incongruity, which allows you to effectively take care of an annoying threat like a giant Hydroid Crassus or something similar, maybe even a Wild Growth Walker, and replace it with a 3/3 do nothing. And if both players are basically establishing large battlefields, then the 3/3 body doesn't matter nearly as much as the ability to flying.
Right. So you see Nass found a Branch Walker with the Incubation Incongruity. He's now made an attack. Samuel falling down to 15. Does Nass have the mana for the Branch Walker in his second main phase? I would assume so.
There's no reason to attack with that elf if you can just play another creature here.
And here we go. Taps 2, and we see Wild Growth Walker instead, meaning Matt's going to get some payoff on that immediately.
Yeah, the life not nearly as important here as just making a large creature that can potentially survive Gates Ablaze. Samuel's going to have to find something like Circuitous Root in a hurry to give him enough gates for that Gates Ablaze to actually take care of the Wild Growth Walker. But Sam's deck actually has some really sweet ones in it. 2 copies of Mass Manipulation in the main deck, which pairs really nicely with those Circuitous Roots, so you can just cast them on the next turn. He's going to need them in a hurry, though. That's a lot of mana. 6 is not cheap.
Yeah, and you see Sam still doing exactly what this Gates deck does, playing tapped Gates, really forfeiting these early turns of the game. He's going to have to rely on something like Gates Ablaze to get him back in the game, but if you notice, no red mana over on Sam's side.
Yeah, Sam here definitely looking for red mana to play that Gates Ablaze, but with no basic mountains, one basic mountain, it's going to be pretty tough. Needs a Plaza of Harmony or that basic mountain next turn to be able to clean this all up before that Wild Growth Walker gets out of control.
Right. It is possible that maybe is it Guild Gate as his bottom gate? Maybe that is red mana?
Oh, you're right. It is.
It's really tough to tell on our screen here. So he may actually already have access to the red mana.
You tricked me.
Yeah, that would be very beneficial going into this next turn, depending on what Matt does here. You have to think he's aware of Gates Ablaze, looking to get that Wild Growth Walker out of range of the powerful removal spell. We see Matt playing an untapped land here. He's going to take 2 from the breeding pool and deploy a second Wild Growth Walker, and now a Merfolk Branch Walker, meaning 2 Wild Growth Walkers would stay out of range unless Sam has the 4th gate, which he's certainly looking for here, assuming he already has that red mana.
Yeah, I think that is an Izak Guild Gate at the bottom, so I'm pretty sure this Gates Ablaze, as long as Sam has a 4th Guild Gate next turn, is going to clean all this up nicely. Matt just pushing so much pressure on the battlefield and forcing Sam to have it. I'm not sure if this is a wise move, but you have to understand in situations like this, if you don't apply enough pressure to your opponent, they never actually have to cast the Gates Ablaze. And if he doesn't have it, you want to try to kill them next turn.
Precisely. I think Matt just has to be the aggressor here. If he does not get on board quickly, he's going to have problems. Sam's going to go ahead, take a draw, plays another gate, has Gates Ablaze for exactly 4, completely devastating Matthew Nass's board, and now we have a game.
In my opinion, Gates Ablaze, the best payoff that this deck has, buys you enough time to turn something like Guild Summit into a real powerhouse engine. Without Gates Ablaze, I don't think this deck could function.
Agree. I've been working on this archetype for some time. Unless you have access to a sweeper like that, it's just not enough. All those powerful payoffs are not good enough. Even like things like Arclight Angel, Guild Summit, all those cards are great. You have to have a catch-up mechanism, though, and Gates Ablaze is the de facto one for this deck.
Yeah, follow-up here, this Hydroid Crassus entering the battlefield as a 3/3, drawing a card, gaining a life. This is basically the worst you can do with Hydroid Crassus, and that's still pretty good.
Yeah, card doesn't have a lot of fail states that you're unhappy with. You're pretty pleased with any Hydroid Crassus entering the battlefield. Obviously, as the game goes on, it gets better and better. But as you see, this is a totally fine threat in this situation. We'll have to see what Sam wants to do in response. Looks like he's going to deploy a forest here, tap 5 lands, and play his own Hydroid Crassus, a 3/3, gaining a life, drawing a card, matching up very well with Matt's threat here.
Yeah, this is a perfect check for that opposing Hydroid Crassus. Sam desperately here wanting something like Hadana's Climb to give his Hydroid Crassus the +1/+1 and potentially threaten lethal in next turn.
Have some results on the other matches thus far. We have Sam Pardee going up a game, playing Is It Phoenix against Demir Mill. And we also have Reginald Beckham going up a game against Jacob Wilson. That's in the Lands versus Grixis Control matchup. The Lands player victorious there. You see Matt Nass's follow-up here. Just a Wild Growth Walker with a fairly empty hand. Actually, an entirely empty hand after he plays the land. That's not exactly where you want to be right now. Sam's going to get some powerful, powerful spells online. And there you see another payoff of the Gates deck. Gaining 3 from your mana base. Can't ask for much more from a land, right, Todd?
Yeah, Plaza of Harmony, if we can get that one on the screen, it is one of my favorite cards in this Gates deck. Giving you that 3 life buffer is such a huge deal. You know, not many lands gain you life, and Plaza of Harmony not only gains you life, it gives you a second, maybe third of any color that you already currently have access to.
Both players with strong secondary plays here. We see Sam tap 3 mana and gate, draw 3 cards off his Guild Summit, but Matt Nass has exactly what he wanted on this turn. Draws Hadana's Climb off the top, both adding a counter to the Hydroid Crassus and threatening to double up and deal a ton of damage to Sam in a hurry.
Yeah, the Hadana's Climb transforming into the backside, which can double the power of this Hydroid Crassus, effectively threatening 8 points coming in, but that 3 life gained from the Plaza of Harmony going to make that not a huge issue. Sam's going to untap here with 6 mana and a lot to do after drawing 3 cards last turn with his Guild Summit.
And Sam found another Gates Ablaze conveniently just large enough to deal with that Hydroid Crassus right now. He will be able to wipe the board if he so chooses. A lot of options available to Sam right now. Circuitous Root in hand, a second Guild Summit in hand. This is kind of where things may start slipping away from Matt Nass.
Yeah, normally in this spot, one way to potentially lose as the Gates deck is to draw too many lands, right? However, Guild Summit means every time you play a gate, either from hand or from your deck via Circuitous Route, you get to draw a card. That's pretty insane.
All these cards look so funny on their face. You're like, they can't be good enough for Constructed. And then you play them, and you're like, oh, absolutely, Guild Summit is a Constructed quality card.
Yeah, the first time I saw the card, I was just like, maybe. And then the first time I cast it, I was just like, holy crap.
Yep. And there is another holy crap as Gates Ablaze comes and wipes the board, resets the game, putting Sam in a dominant position. Matt with no cards in hand. Sam with a incredibly full grip, going to be able to secure this route, draw 2 cards, gain 2 mana if he wants here. That is going to be the play.
Yeah, and with potentially access to mass manipulation, mass manipulation next turn, could steal any threat that Matthew's able to put onto the battlefield. Just all engines running here for Sam. Just wants one of his big payoff cards. Archangel would gain him enough life so that he's not really that threatened by a single swing from the Winged Temple of Araska. But the Gateway Colossus, the Gatebreaker Ram, or another Hydroid Crassus, all these are good enough to basically take the game at this point in full control.
Yeah, it feels like just about anything does the job here for Sam. Let's be honest, if Matt wins this game, he got ridiculously lucky.
Yeah, but that happens, and this is a great start.
Yes,
Growth
it
Chamber
is.
Guardian here, effectively acting as 2 threats. Nass is going to search for a second copy here, going to put it in his hand thanks to that ability on Growth Chamber Guardian, and probably cast the other one, and he's going to get them both taken by mass manipulation.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's going to have to do quite a bit more. I do believe we have a mass manipulation in Sam's hand. There's also a removal spell in the form of Lava Coil, I believe. Sam going to have some options here. Going to untap, take a draw. I think you see Growth Spiral was the draw there. There's also the Lava Coil in hand.
Growth Spiral can effectively draw 2 cards in this scenario as well if Sam chooses to put a gate onto the battlefield with the ability.
Correct. Let's see what Sam likes here. I think he just needs to take the first step of controlling the board. Now, does he have the requisite 4 blue mana? Obviously, a very restrictive casting cost. I do believe I see 3 blue gates.
Yep,
there they are.
With the Circuitous Route last turn, Sam obviously knows that he needs that 4th blue mana. A very restrictive casting cost on this Mass Manipulation. It's interesting to see a card like Mass Manipulation showing up in a 4-color deck, but when you play cards like Circuitous Route and Plaza of Harmony, as well as just tilt your guild gates towards blue in general, I think that it's easily accomplishable.
Right. And look, Mass Manipulation, clearly on its face a powerful card. I think one that maybe people didn't expect to see a lot of constructive play, but that had a lot more to do with this casting cost. There's only a few decks in the format that are ever going to be able to play Mass Manipulation. We found a good one, though, in the 4-color Gates deck. Not only does it ramp and have access to that, 4th blue mana, it's just able to set up these situations going long where it's really going to leverage Mass Manipulation. And there you see 8 mana tapped. It is going to be Mass Manipulation, taking both Growth Chamber Guardians.
Yeah, this is a huge swing here for Sam, but this is what happens when you let the Gates deck go past turn 5 or 6. Every card they play is going to be some giant thing, some giant board sweeper, or it's going to draw them 5 or 6 cards.
But the hits keep coming from Matt Nass. He has drawn another Hydroid Crassus, meaning he's going to have extra threats in his hand. This demands an answer. It's large enough to, with the combination of the backside of the flipped Hadana's Climb, end the game in one swing. I do think Sam's going to find answers.
I mean, he's got some stuff. It looks like he already has another Mass Manipulation in hand. Just drew Hydroid Crassus of his own for turn. He can cast that for quite a bit to give it basically high enough toughness to block that Hydroid Crassus and survive through the pump from the flipped wings of Araska.
It's a little scary, though. Some things can go wrong should he choose to commit all of his mana to that Crassus. We'll have to see if that's the line he wants to take.
Yeah, something even as simple as Vivian Reed, tick down, land, pump.
Right. Here we see an attack from those Growth Chamber Guardians.
So really heads-up attack by Sam with that Lava Coil in hand. He would love to deal with this Hydroid Crassus for just 2 mana.
Right.
Now he has to spend 6. Or just play a giant Hydroid Crassus.
Yeah, he's going to take the risk here. And like I said, there are things that can go wrong. They're not super likely, but they're possible. Sam's willing to take the chance. He's going to draw 5 cards, gain 5 life, and present a tremendous Crassus on the battlefield.
Yeah, this is where Hydroid Crassus really starts to shine. But Matthew Nass has an opening here.
Incongruity. Incongruity is a scary card here.
Incongruity plus activating the Winged Temple of Araska. He has a few outs. Let's see if he hits it.
Sam's going to go to cleanup, choose some cards to discard here.
Only has 7 gates. Can't quite play a free Colossus.
Yeah, I am not sure about this play, Todd. I think in Sam's position, I would have considered a safer line. I just think as long as he survives these next 1 or 2 turns, there's almost nothing that can happen. And here he's introduced some vulnerability into the game.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes you have to make that choice if you're put between a rock and a hard place. But with the answer to the Hydroid Crassus in hand, I'm not in love with it, and Sam might pay the price.
Let's see. Nass reaching for some mana, tapping 2. What's the follow-up? Another Growth Chamber Guardian.
So he doesn't have the kill this turn. He's going to just build a slightly bigger battlefield. Play out his last 2 Growth Chamber Guardians. Jade Light Ranger as a follow-up. Now digging hard off that Explorer to try to find that way to deal with the opposing Hydroid Crassus. But with Sam untapping here with a potentially second copy of Mass Manipulation, this game could be over right now.
I would expect Sam to close the door effectively here. I think he can eliminate all possibilities of losing this game with a large Mass Manipulation and should do so in this spot. Let's see. Nass develops a board, reveals another Hadana's Climb off the Explorer from Jade Light Ranger, choosing to keep it on top. Sam has that information now. If anything, I think that only pushes him further towards casting the Mass Manipulation here.
If I'm not mistaken, he can actually make a 20 power Hydroid Crassus next turn with that second copy of Hadana's Climb. If he activates the Winged Temple of Vraska, plays the Hadana's Climb, chooses to move to combat, and then I guess it would be bigger than that. I feel like 24.
Yeah.
Quite good. But
Sam considering his options here. Hopefully it does not come to that for Sam's sake. We shall see.
there's only one option. Mass Manipulation. Steal your opponent's entire side of the battlefield. This card's going to spike in price after this game alone. This is impressive.
Yeah, I've enjoyed Mass Manipulation in the times I've gotten to cast it, especially in these mid-range matchups. You're already favored as any form of the Gates deck, be it Nexus of Gates or, you know, this particular more mid-range-ish version. But that card really pushes things even further. It looks like Sam disagrees with us, casting a Lava Coil on the Growth Chamber Guardian. Is it possible we have the card in his hand wrong?
Maybe. It could be a second
Could
copy
be a
of
Guild Summit.
Summit.
That would make a lot of sense given the situation. I mean, you can't justify not playing Mass Manipulation here. There we see another Lava Coil. Some sequencing issues there.
Yeah, potentially.
Second Lava Coil being cast. Yeah, it does not look like there's another Mass Manipulation here.
Yeah, I was just wrong. It's a Guild Summit, and he can potentially draw a bunch of cards here, but I think he's about to just get hit for 24 damage in the face.
Yeah, we see a free Gatekeeper Colossus, a very cheap Gatebreaker Ram. Vigilance Trample, not doing anything about that Krasis.
Yeah, doesn't have reach.
Here you see another Guild Summit. Sam knows about the second copy of Hadana's Climb on the top of Matt Nass's deck.
And Matt knows he has it right here. He's going for it.
Right. Here you see Growth Chamber Guardian. Here you see the second Hadana's Climb.
It costs 3 to activate. That's my fault.
Correct.
I thought it only cost 2 to activate. He's a little short, but if he gets to untap one more time, he can do it again.
Right, he's going to need another untap phase here. Okay, so that makes more sense given both players' position. I think some card spotting issues threw off our evaluation of this game a little bit, but now we see things coming. The picture's becoming clearer. Matt's still looking to establish a board. Sam's still with the dominant position, but the game not yet closed.
Yeah, I mean, this Gatebreaker Ram is gigantic. The Gateway Colossus also quite large. The Hydro Crass is a 10-10. I'm pretty sure this is going to be a lethal attack. Matthew needs to put up at least one blocker, maybe two, in order to not be dead.
Let's see if Sam spots that. Takes the draw for the turn.
Even before attacks, though, Samuel here with this 4-color Gates deck can just play a gate, draw some cards, play
Get some more information.
Harmony. Yeah, play this Plaza Harmony, gain 3 life. I think an all-out attack here, maybe not with the 4/4s, but maybe so. It's a lot of damage.
Sam going to confer with his teammate. Have a careful think about this turn. This is a very important turn.
Yeah, usually when you have to think for a little bit, the answer is attack with everything. At least in my book.
Sam agrees, and he's going to push everything into the red zone. Let's see as Matt lines up some blocks here.
Yeah, so he can still potentially pump that Growth Chamber Guardian that doesn't have any counters on it. That's threatening lethal with those three attackers going unblocked here. If I'm not mistaken, that Gatebreaker Ram is quite large.
Yeah, that's a big boy. Big goat there. I believe we're looking at a 10-10 on my quick read of the battlefield.
Yeah, that looks like 22 damage to me. So it looks like that Hydro Crassus might not have a good block to actually have Matt survive. And he's going to pack it in.
Matt agrees. No good blocks there. Interesting game from the four-color Gates deck. You saw the critical play of the Gates Ablaze that really turned things back in Sam's favor. Then had to find a little bit more help. Mass Manipulation provided that in spades. Let's go to the players' sideboards here. We'll start over on the left side with Matt Nass. Looking at 2 Entrancing Melodies, 1 Cruel Harpooner, 4 Negate, 2 Frilled Mystic, 3 Vivian Reed, and 3 Carnage Tyrant. Todd, what do you like here from Matt Nass?
So you have to treat this Gates deck like a control deck. Their goal is to go super long, hit you with a bunch of sweepers like Gates Ablaze, and then try to establish control around turn 5 or 6. If you bring in some negates, you can knock out some key pieces there, knocking off their Gates Ablaze or Guild Summon or something huge like Mass Manipulation. Unfortunately, this particular build of Gates Ablaze, of the four-color Gates deck, does have access to a bunch of those creature payoffs, which Negate doesn't hit. So while it is still effective, it's not nearly as good as it could be. I'll be bringing in those. The 2 copies of Frilled Mystic. Vivian Reed seems like a no-brainer because it deals with both Guild Summon as well as Giant Hydrocrassus. And then I don't think you want Carnage Tyrant because the four-color Gates deck doesn't have counterspells or really targeted removal, and they can play something like the Gatebreaker Ram or the Gateway Colossus and really just check it easily.
Yeah, I agree with your assessment. Before we move on to Sam's sideboard, I do want to mention that this match is tied 1 match apiece on both sides. The Lands deck defeated Grixis Control in the hands of Reginald Beckham, but Sam Pardee was able to defeat Demir Mill with Is It Phoenix, meaning the match we're watching is the decider. So why don't we go ahead and take a look at Sam's sideboard. Sam presenting 3 Negates, 2 Archway Angel, 2 Cindervines, 2 Crushing Canopies, 2 Gatebreaker Ram, 1 Banefire, 1 Carnage Tyrant, 1 Gate Colossus, and finally 1 Star of Extinction. Todd, what are you liking from Sam?
So with Matthew Nass not having any traditional spot removal cards like Carnage Tyrant, they're not really for this matchup. I think you go a little bit bigger as well as cheaper. Gate Colossus, Gatebreaker Ram, these cards come in. They play a huge role in helping you close games once you take control. And they usually survive your, Gates Ablaze. So they're just really solid threats. I like the 1-of Star of Extinction as a way to just completely sweep Matthew's side of the board and potentially take care of Winged Temple of Vraska after the Hadana's Climb has transformed. Crushing Canopy can deal with the front half of Hadana's Climb as well as a large Crassus. And then the Archway Angel, just going with that full-on creature plan might be worthwhile to make sure that you pad your life total enough not to get hit with a big thing.
Yeah, if you're looking at this 4-color Gates deck and you're kind of blown away, you haven't seen this before, 1, welcome to the party. 2, you got to play this deck. And there's no better place to play a deck like 4-color Gates than SCG Game Night. And as you see, in February, SCG Game Night offering one of the coolest sets of tokens and sleeves,
yeah.
The Yeti Steady Go set. Very cool stuff.
I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of Yeti Steady Go. That's my jam right there.
It hasn't replaced Perdukin in my heart yet, but I also like the Yeti Steady Go. And also, if we go into March, you'll see we have Veni Vidi Armadillo. Are you an Armadillo fan?
I came, I saw, I armadilloed.
The classic phrase.
Yeah.
Moving on, we have our first look at April's Game Night card.
Ooh, what's this one?
Looks like Cluck and Dagger. I think that's a ferret. Is that a ferret wearing a sweater?
It's an assassin token because he's going to eat the chicken.
That is adorable.
Got him!
If you're hoping you can get your hands on Cluck and Dagger, make sure you go check out an SCG Game Night near you. Looks like our players are about ready for Game 2 here. Matt Nass, of course, going to be on the play. Leads with the Forest. Passes over to Sam. Sam with the draw. Guess what? Tap Guildgate. Big surprise. Going back to Nass, who plays a Hinterland Harbor on tap. No follow-up play. Second tapped gate from Sam.
Yeah, just a very classic start from the 4-color Gates deck. First 2 lines usually entering the battlefield tapped. Usually casting something like Growth Spiral on turn 3 or 4 to ramp you up into Circuitous Route as well as another tapped land on turn 4.
Matthew Nass has his first play of the match. It's a Jade Light Ranger, leaving Growth Chamber Guardian on top. Going to be a 4-3. Important to generate early pressure. But you see some pressure on Sam's side as well. He gained 3 life from his Plaza and then played a Gatebreaker Ram 4/4. Could trade with the Jade Light Ranger if it wants.
Yeah, I don't think that's the right play here, though.
Don't think
With that
so either.
island in hand, as well as a circuitous route, Sam here looking to make a giant Gatebreaker Ram next turn, and with both Vigilance and Trample, could threaten to close the game in just a few short turns.
Right, I would pass on that block very quickly, especially with circuitous route in hand, just getting big on that Ram as soon as possible. Matt Nass going to have to think about his play here.
Yeah, he left the Growth Chamber Guardian on top as a means to protect himself against something like Gates Ablaze. However, in this spot against Gatebreaker Ram, he's left with a 2/2 in hand for 2 mana that doesn't do a whole lot.
Right, and instead going to lead with Incubation Druid. You see another Plaza of Harmony going up to 22 life from Sam. Sam taps 4 mana. There's circuitous route, and Nass has the negate. Well set up by Nass.
Yeah.
Only an attack for 4 by Sam there.
This is a great use of that sideboard to negate, taking care of Circuitous Route, which in turn shrinks the Gatebreaker Ram and buys Matt enough time to apply some more pressure before Sam really gets the engine going that is this 4-color gate strat.
You see Nass untaps, plays Growth Chamber Guardian, threatening to evolve that at end of turn, but also leaving up negate mana, giving Sam a difficult decision on his next turn. Going to get in with the Ram.
That's an interesting choice here, in my opinion. Sam holding up negate here instead of potentially trading that Growth Chamber Guardian with the Gatebreaker Ram. It's only a 4/4 right now. Wow. Sam actually has Expansion Explosion too. He could have used that expansion half to counter the negate by copying it, let his Guild Summer resolve, and really get his engine running.
Yeah, interesting decision point. I don't see any further gates in Sam's hand, so he wouldn't have drawn any cards had he used his mana to protect the Guild Summit. However, it's so critical as this deck moves into the late game to have access to that ability to cantrip off basically all of your cards. Yeah, I'm not sure I see a better use for the Expansion Explosion either. So
not right now. That's the thing. You get that Guild Summit going. You draw a gate next turn, everything changes. You draw a Circuitous Route, everything changes.
Right, and you see Nass continues to develop the board. Not many gates in play for Sam, so it's unlikely a Gates Ablaze will necessarily clean up everything Sam needs to clean up. Things looking good for Nass right now, but we see Circuitous Route off the top.
Yeah, this is a big one, unless Pardee has a third negate.
Oh, Nass has the third negate. That has lined up incredibly well against Sam's draw. He has stopped every single payoff of this Gates deck that Sam has presented. Nass solidifying his position, trading off with the Gatebreaker Ram. This game has swung heartily in Matt Nass's favor.
Yeah, and Samuel not able to draw gates to get that Gatebreaker Ram out of trading range means that Sam is very happy to trade for it in that spot with the J-Light Ranger, since it adds Vigilance. And then he's just going to untap and then go crazy with things like Growth Chamber Guardian, get another one, and just start attacking for 8 and really chunk Sam's life total.
Yeah, effective attacks from Matt Nass here.
And transforming this Adonis Climb immediately and activating the Growth Chamber Guardian. Attacking here for 9, putting Sam down to 3. He's dead next turn if he doesn't have anything.
This is how Matt drew up his game plan when he was thinking about this matchup. Quickly on board, disruptive. This is where he's going to find success in games like this.
Yeah, and here Sam's stuck in a rock and a hard place. 2 gates, so a Gates Ablaze won't even do it. Hydro Crassus as a 3/3 only puts him to 4 life. He's dead on board, even without the activation of the Winged Temple of Vraska.
Yep. Easy game, says Matt Nass. He says, yep, I got it.
I will attack you.
Sam
I choose to attack you.
I agree. You do have it. Got to pick
in.
up the cards here. Heading on to a deciding game 3.
Yeah.
That is exactly the vulnerable point of the Gates deck in post-board games. It has issues with negate. No matter how you build your Gates deck, no matter what you want the payoffs to be, I think the deck has some pronounced issues to negate, and that's what it really has to overcome.
I mean, in that spot, the Gatebreaker Ram gets under the negate. But the lack of actual raw guild gates drawn from Samuel meant that Gatebreaker Ram just wasn't big enough to rumble in combat, never could really effectively block without dying, never could really get any sort of real foothold in that game. Unfortunately for him, Matthew Nass drew 3 copies of negate and really shut the door on him pretty early on.
One of the big tension points with this gate deck right now is just exactly how many gates it's going to play.
Right.
And you see the numbers kind of swing all over the place. It's a very difficult decision to make because there's a real cost to having your entire mana base come into play tapped.
Yes.
I've seen early versions that started around like 12 gates or so. I've seen later versions that have pushed as high as 20 gates.
Yeah.
Sam falling somewhere in between at 16 gates. Todd, what do you think is ultimately going to be the number of gates that this archetype has to settle on?
I just like casting Growth Spiral on turn 2. So, and then chaining that into Circuitous Route on turn 3. So you need 2 untapped lands for that to happen. I think you probably need to play upwards of probably like 12 lands that enter the battlefield untapped, with a majority of them being basic forest or breeding pool. And if that's the case, I think you can only really afford to play about 14 gates, maybe less. And I lean towards something like 26, 27 lands. And I like, a little less than half of them entering untapped. But you need enough gates to make things like Guild Summit worthwhile. And so the more basics or the more non-gate lands you play, the worse all of your cards become.
So I started sharing an opinion with you. As I've played this deck more and more, I've actually crept up to closer to 20 gates. And let me tell you why. I think the payoffs, you need them to be consistent. You need those cards like Guild Summit, like Gates Ablaze to just do exactly what they're meant to do every time. And the times you don't are where you lose, as we just saw with Sam there. You can survive playing a turn behind curve. You can't survive your payoff cards doing nothing.
That's fair. And that's completely reasonable to not only assume, but is that a breeding pool? I can't tell. I
think that's just an alt art guild gate.
Why would they make alternate art guild gates? Give me a break. You're right.
There are multiple versions of the
guild gate because it has land-gate.
Yes, it does. And you see Sam has gained 3 life, deployed a Guild Summit very early. Great spot to be in if you're Sam. Matt with a more aggressive slanting draw from his deck. He's going to put the Incubation Incongruity in the graveyard, meaning he's got a pair of 3 power creatures. It's a nice little clock, but let's see if Sam can get all of his stuff going. Obviously, Nass's shields are down here. I think we have untapped land, Circuitous Route. That's going to put 2 lands into play and draw 2 cards. Couldn't ask for a better start from Sam's 4-color Gates deck.
Yeah, if you've played Magic as long as I have, you know that there is some raw power in a card like Circuitous Route, harkening all the way back to... why is the name escaping me?
Explosive Vegetation.
I got it. I got that right at the same time. Explosive Vegetation was a standard staple for quite some time. Circuitous Route literally just one-ups it. You can get basics or you can get guild gates.
Yeah, and when you have a Guild Summit in play, it also reads draw 2 cards.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, it's busted. And it looks like Sam actually has Expansion Explosion in hand. He can choose to use that effectively as a negate for Matthew's negates to protect one of these big spells that he's probably going to start casting next turn.
Yeah, I think we're looking at a Krasis in hand, so we can start going down that route. Obviously completely impervious to negate. That'll play very well for Sam. Let's see what Nass has on his turn 4. Thinking about his options.
If Nass taps out here, Sam might just go for an explosion for X equals 3, killing one of these creatures and drawing 3 cards. It really just depends on the texture of the game. He can play a 5/5 Hydroid Crassus next turn if he has an untapped land, gaining 2 life and drawing 2 cards. That's a pretty real clock as well as a good blocker.
I think he's in a spot where there's no bad plays, right? He's got his engine online. He has a ton of mana. There's just the world is Sam's oyster right now, and he's going to head into this turn with a bevy of options. You see him move the Hydroid Krasis to the front there. Still continuing to assess options.
No, I think that's a really good point that you made, though. There's no bad play in this spot. An explosion for X equals 3 on a 3-power creature here is pretty good. Guild Gate tapped, drawing a card, and then a Hydro Crassus for X equals 4. You still get those 2 cards, still gain that 2 life, and you have a blocker here.
Right. And Sam's hand just getting fuller and fuller. Board getting more and more developed. It feels like a vice grip squeezing around Matt Nass, just closing out all potential routes to victory as Sam gets more and more options and mana as the game goes on.
Yeah, and every card he draws digs him deeper to Gatebreaker Rams, which very easily check these small creatures on the ground. The Hydro Crassus checks the one in the air. And then if he's ever able to draw something like Gates Ablaze, he can clean up all their creatures in case things go south.
think Nass really needs to make some inroads on this particular turn. We see a Vivian Reed killing the Crisis.
That's a good start.
Agreed. Powerful attack here. Going to swing in for a total of 8 damage. Sam going to fall to 8. Untaps here. What kind of options available to Sam on this turn? We see a Gatebreaker Ram off the top, Expansion Explosion in hand, Circuitous Root in hand. A bevy of options, which are going to be good enough.
At this point in the game, it feels a lot like Sam is playing EDH or Commander. You know, everything he plays says draw a card or do some big splashy thing. He's already established the engine. Now he just has to make sure that Matt can't find a way to poke through those last 8 points of damage.
And I think Sam should be worried about this next turn that he's passing into. Here we see another Crassus. Maybe that'll ease some of the fears. We're going to go up to 11 life, draw 3 cards, have a 6/6 blocker in play.
Yeah, and here Sam just digging for one of those big sweepers or big payoffs like a Mass Manipulation.
Hasn't found one.
Has not found one, no. And I don't think he has a Gates of Blaze either. And if Sam has another answer here to this Hydroid Crassus, things could look pretty bad for Sam. He has 1 turn basically to find the sweeper.
Let's see what Nass has here. Taking the draw. Going to tick up that Vivian.
Craw Harpooner.
There are a lot of potentially powerful cards that could be lurking in Nass's hand that put Sam in a very vulnerable position right now.
Yeah, answers to Hydroid Crassus. Whoa!
How about Entrancing Melody?
Give me that Crassus!
That's a pretty good one.
How many gates are in play? 5? That's not enough.
I think Sam's now in sweeper or die territory.
He doesn't have enough mana to mass manipulation everything. He needs a Guild Gate and a Gates of Blaze right now, and he needs and he needs Matthew Nass not to have a negate.
Right. Very vulnerable spot. Entrancing Melody is such a strong answer to Hydroid Crisis.
Baby.
And it looks like just a forest off the top. Sam can get a redraw. He can play a gate here, draw a card off the Guild Summit, take another look. Oh, things are real scary now for Sam. It looked like this game was going to go hard in his favor, but the top of his deck was kind of unkind to him over the past few turns.
Yeah, he drew a lot of cards, but a lot of redundancy and not a lot of sweepers. Like I said, in Game 1, that Gates of Blaze, one of the best payoffs for this 4-color Gates deck. And if you don't have access to it, a ragtag group of 4-power creatures, 3-power creatures, come rumbling in and shrink your life total.
I am learning that Mass Manipulation and Guild Summit are very similar looking cards. It's hard for me to tell which of the two Sam has in his hand right now.
It's okay. We'll just not speculate on it. How about that?
I like that approach. It looks like we're going to see Circuitous Root. Again, more redraws. Get another chance to look for that Gates of Blaze off the top of the deck.
Funny thing, though, even if he draws it, he's going to go down to 1 mana. Can't use expansion to copy a negate to protect it.
Right.
If Matthew Nass has a negate in hand, this game is over.
Yeah, I think maybe another sequencing again. He could have led with Circuitous Route to look at 2 cards and then still be able to present the 5 mana to protect the Gates.
He didn't draw it anyway, and it looks like that's all she wrote for Sam. And Matthew Nass and his team are going to take this one down in explosive, entrancing Melody fashion.
Yeah, I think it's all over but the attacks here. Sam's sorting through options, but I don't see anything there that's going to bail him out. And he does extend the hand. Matt Nass takes down what I believe to be a very difficult matchup for the Simic Climb deck.
Yeah, those sideboard negates playing a crucial